Okay, great. Thanks for joining us. This video is a great opportunity for us to chat with Kelsey Cohn, an alumni from the class of 2021 from Chatham, to hear about her experiences. Kelsey is currently in Paris. She is a student at Emerson College and also with the Paris College of Arts. So Kelsey could definitely explain that a lot better than I can, but this would be a great opportunity to hear about the different experiences that you're kind of experiencing in Paris in particular. So Kelsey, why don't you introduce yourself for the group who's watching and share any info, give some context to kind of what your path is.
I'm Kelsey. I'm studying film art at these two schools. I'm in sort of a hybrid program, so I'm not really a full student of Emerson, but not really a full student of PCA, my school in Paris as well. I do. My school is very small, but it is an international sort of global experience at this art school.
That's great. So jumping quickly into that, what made you choose this opportunity and how did you have to go about, pursuing it? Was it through Emerson? Was it through PCA? Just any context you could give for people that might be interested in starting out in a different sense, like with that global experience in particular.
This program is sort of a new partnership between my school in Paris and Emerson. It's about 3 years old, so no single class has graduated yet. They're going to graduate this year. But I applied through Emerson, and everything in the admissions portal was done through Emerson. There was just also another login with another school that I had to kind of manage after the fact. But the choice to be here was actually quite difficult for me during the decisions process after admission, and that whole crazy mess. But it was definitely something that I had to weigh, and it took me a couple weeks to decide. It was something I was thinking about literally constantly, and I had this massive paper of just all of my pros and cons of what could possibly be an outcome of this. And it was definitely a choice. I also got into another school, more prestigious, more well-known kind of name, a bigger school, but it was less focused on the arts, and it maybe a less interesting location, not to diss where that school is, but yeah, so I sort of weighed those pros and cons and decided that sometimes the location and sometimes taking a bigger risk might be worth it, just for the sort of global experience. And that's not to say that there's no homesickness and there's no regret or thinking what would be different in a different situation if I had chosen differently. But I think that I'm very glad that I decided to take sort of the riskier route. And I think it's definitely brought me a new experience and something that I can really share a lot about.
Totally. I would agree. It's like you took the path less traveled, and it's so cool that you did because like you're in Paris, right? And you're really choosing. I like that you emphasize that, you had other schools that were options for you, but ultimately it wasn't like they weren't aligning with what you truly wanted to do, right? The arts and have that focus. So looking through that really like mature and realistic lens is great that you were able to kind of land where you're at. And I appreciate you too recognizing, right? Like it isn't always just like, it's not like sunshine and rainbows all the time, right? And that could happen with any kind of scenario and any kind of college process and transition. But certainly being across, across the world can add different layers to it. But I would agree, this global experience is very cool and just probably opens up perspectives that you didn't even realize or maybe wouldn't have had if you had stayed domestically. What is the partnership like? Are you in Paris for the entire time? Could you share with the group like how that works?
It's interesting. It's a little tricky. So I have summer semesters at Emerson on their Boston campus. So those are 6-week chunks for 2 6-week chunks during the summer. And then we moved to Paris for the academic year. I have regular spring semester, like I'm a full-time student here, but we just also continue. We don't have a summer break. So I do go to school in both Paris and the US, but just mostly here in France.
Okay, that's great. And I know you've said that, there were a lot of factors that went into making the decision. In hindsight, what do you think, like thinking now where you are and talking to yourself as a senior and realizing those pros and cons as they're actually happening, what would you tell yourself at the time then, as you were, I know you had a big weight on your shoulders of trying to make that decision, but now where you're at now through all of that, what's something you would tell yourself as a senior?
I think I would tell myself that I need to get used to being more independent, more immersive with my academic experience. I think that making this choice to come internationally, it can be quite isolating, which is something that I sort of took a long time to get used to. Like I do live alone. I live off campus, so it's sometimes sort of crushing, especially with a language barrier. But I think that once I learned how to go out into the world and enjoy myself by myself, for myself, and experience all the world around me and think how I can sort of apply that to my academic experience and apply everything I'm learning to just generally being a student. I think that was something that really helped. That felt like a breakthrough in sort of making a difference between me being a senior in high school and me being a college student, was sort of learning that level of independence.
That's really, really well said. And I think, right, it has this clear distinction between my time in Chatham, right, and my time like throwing myself into the world and getting immersed. And there's so much value in independence and also like loving being alone. I like being alone. So that's something that I learned to love and it's great. But obviously connection is excellent too. So I'm glad to hear that, after some transition and adjustment, understandably, you started to then feel more comfortable, like kind of putting yourself out there and putting feelers out there. So for, what would you say? I mean, there obviously we highlighted some realistic parts of this. What would you say is like maybe your top, if you can't think of just one, maybe top two or top couple favorite things about choosing this path?
I would say I love the this is France specific, but I love the culture around art here. There's a very strong appreciation for and a curation for art. Like museums will have ongoing exhibitions and that, but in more of a generally applicable sense, I think that appreciation for the art is something that can be found anywhere and can be found in the US if you look in the right places. So my personal favorite thing, like I said before, is just sort of going out into the world and seeing how I can apply the things I'm experiencing to my artistic practice, what I'm doing academically. So like today I went to a natural history museum here in Paris, and I don't do anything with natural history. I don't know much about biology. It doesn't really matter, but I was able to sort of look at it and think, like, how could I apply the themes I'm seeing? So maybe that could inspire like an environmental project in the future or something like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that I'm glad to hear that, to think about the exposure and just being involved and realizing that you can apply a lot of what you're doing to a lot of different areas. It's really good points. So Kelsey, what would you, sorry, go. No, go ahead, please.
Other favorite things, I've been able to travel and connect with a few people just around and focusing on projects. We're able to sort of connect with people that we wouldn't otherwise and connect with people who don't necessarily speak English or speak languages that that we can kind of understand. So it's cool to also sort of bring ourselves into being able to interact with people without really fear of like being misunderstood or that kind of thing. It's cool to kind of like go out into the world and like just sort of talk to people and without fear of being like embarrassed or that kind of thing, and work with them as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So all really good stuff. And kind of in closing, what advice would you give to like the current seniors?
I would say consider international paths. It's really enriching. If you can study abroad at your school, I would study abroad. But beyond that, like if you are making a decision between maybe a school that looks better on paper and a school that is more of um, aligned with the path you want to take, like school I go to, I would consider that. It's definitely different, and it's definitely something that has negatives along with positives, but I would say that it's worth it sometimes, and it's worth it to sort of go out of your comfort zone, connect with people, network, live by yourself, experience the world. So that's my advice.
That's great advice. Absolutely. Totally. There's so much value in all of those things that you mentioned. And I agree, keeping in mind like what is really what fuels you most rather than searching for, you know, a name or things along those lines. Like making that what may seem like a tough decision, but what is ultimately the right decision for you based on your interests. So, Kelsey, so glad that you found that and found that path and are experiencing these really cool global experiences that others might not have an opportunity to do, and just will set you up for a lot of success moving forward. And I'm sure lots of really good food too.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelsey.